everyone. I hope you're all doing well. I'm Sanane Ndlovu, a doctoral fellow at HUMA, the Institute for Humanities in Africa, based in the University of Cape Town in South Africa. On behalf of the HUMA team, you're all welcome and thank you for joining us today in our Advanced African Epistemologists seminar series. Today, we are joined by Professor Omofolabo Ajayi-Soyinka. Professor Ajayi was a faculty at the University of Kansas in the United States with a joint appointment in the Department of Theater and Women, Gender and Sexuality Studies. She retired from the active teaching as a professor emerita. Now, as an independent scholar, she concentrates on research writing and creative activities. She's an interdisciplinary scholar. Her scholarship is centered around theater, cultural and gender studies and theories. In addition to critical and creative articles and book chapters, Professor Ajayi-Soyinka is also the author of Yoruba Dance and co-editor of African Literature at the Millennium and Reflections, and Anthology of New Works by African Women Poets. She is a mother, a grandmother, and an activist. She's a graduate of the Leeds University in England. She's also a graduate of the University of Ife in Nigeria. Her talk is going to be centered around an epistemology of African dance. Professor Soyinka, thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you for making the time. Looking forward to the talk. The virtual floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And let me start by expressing my appreciation to the HUMA Institute for this invitation. I was surprised when Dr. Usha contacted me about speaking here. Apparently, he was at a conference on Zoom where I had made a presentation, and here I am today. A special shout of gratitude to you, Dr. Usha. This is a unique opportunity for me to review and revisit an important part of my research that I had neglected to develop further. I am very honored to share my thoughts and exchange ideas with you at your institution. Now, a statement of fact. Dance is the central art of African peoples. Whether in contemporary times or in the ancient past, the continent is teeming with dances that are as varied as the different languages spoken and as complex as the cultures and the people. In the ancient times especially, at least one dance existed to capture each significant event for each age group. And for their prolific efforts in creating and performing, the dancers and choreographers were valued members of their respective communities. Such proliferation has not failed to captivate the world. From the prejudicial colonial times, when African dances were contemptuously dismissed, to our more accommodating but tourist-focused contemporary times. Even early anthropologists who studied dances as human behavior scored African dances lowest on the evolutionary scale. Nevertheless, the dances remain popular and vibrant performances continue because the dances matter to African peoples. They have meaning. They are integral to their ways of life and critical to their knowledge base and identity. Basically, what I want to do today is explore that knowledge base within the context, the experiences, and the overall philosophical construct of the owner, creator of the dances. Knowledge encapsulates the ways we understand the world, and the concept developed to understand it are historically and culturally specific. And how we construct that meaning depends on our paradigmatic approach. Therefore, I am examining African dances with a few specific examples from within the philosophical construct of the people themselves. The physical body, as the primary tool of dance, is an essential factor in this analysis. And through semiotic analysis, I will examine how a specific culture views the body and deploys it cognitively in nonverbal communication towards knowledge construction. What I think Merleau-Ponty would later call embodied cognition. For a more focused discussion and eschewing generalizations, I will draw mostly from a small section of the continent, the Yoruba nation in Nigeria, West Africa. Allow me a quick digression into my journey in dance scholarship. The story has many twists, but I will limit it to my search for a department that would admit me for a doctoral degree in dance in the early 1980s in Nigeria. There was not one university offering an undergraduate degree in dance, not even in the theater or performing arts departments. One available option for me was in anthropology, but I lacked the required proficiency in mathematics. English department was the other, but dance from the English department, I almost gave up. But fortunately, on a whim, I had bought a book on semiotics, the study of science. Reading through, I found my focus and the theoretical basis for my dissertation. I cite this example to illustrate how, for a long time, African scholarship neglected to pay attention to a preeminent cultural expression and art form, and its significance in knowledge production in African cultures. Although Festa 77 had awakened official and public interest in Nigerian cultures, the dances had been reduced to what I call airport dance or executive airport sex lottery. It was like validating Europeans' racist and pejorative concept of African dances as nothing but lewd, aimless, and meaningless shuffling. Western colonial ethnocentric prejudices and myopic religious morality had dismissed African dances as the ultimate symbol of a degenerate people, and in order to uplift them, their dances must be devalued and erased. Translation: deprive these people of their sense of meaning and identity so as to render them submissive to our imperialist agenda. Little wonder then, for a long time, dance was not considered a worthy academic pursuit in many African institutions. Any African serious about growth and development and contemporary relevance would not touch dance with a mile-long pole. And it worked, at least for a while, as evidenced by my dance dissertation camouflaged in the English department. In the universities, the dances were just archived, basically for reference purposes. When a significant form of a people's culture and the way of knowing is systematically removed from public discourse, not only by arrogant foreigners, but also by the people of the culture, that people's intellectual acuity is in jeopardy. Happily, such pejorative presumptions are disappearing, and dance as a discipline in the humanities is growing strong in Nigerian universities. However, in the early 80s, writing a dissertation on dance as an academic discipline in the English department was, to say the least, radical. The Eurocentric education we have adopted in Nigeria and generally in Africa located dance not even in the performing arts, but in physical education. Judith Lynn Hanna attributes this to the, quote, Western inability to conceive the body as a vehicle of conceptualization and symbolic emotion, as well as immediate feeling and physicality. By contrast, the body to Africans is a way of knowing through dance, as a human activity which uses the human body as its primary tool. Dance offers a theory of knowledge grounded in body movements. By the late 1980s, when I relocated to the USA, dance studies were moving out of the sports sciences and being paired with music. But given my background, I thought dance, music, and drama should be together in the performing arts unit and chose to be in the Department of Theatre and Film. One of my courses, African Dance Theatre, that became quite popular, almost got derailed before it started. I had assigned readings which the students were not expecting, nor did they believe that there was anything to read about African dance. To them, African dance was just jumping up and down, flaying limbs in all directions. But I insisted that the dances have meaning. And I tell them, to know the dance, know the culture. Fortunately, my colleagues trusted my judgments and I taught the course for many years. A close reading of African dance shows that it is a microcosm of its engendering culture, an embodiment of the people's collective wisdom. More than mere entertainment, it points to and documents history, conveys emotion, celebrates critical landmarks, and helps to unify communities. It is a gateway to a people's culture, where the culture has accumulated as knowledge over time that makes that culture dynamic and living relevant to the people. This is not to deny the entertaining attributes of the dance. On the contrary, its aesthetic delights are critical aspect of its embodied wisdom. Again, as Malio-Ponto aptly observes, African dance engages with the world, not subjected to it. Yet, dance is an ephemeral art whose product disappears with its producer. When in its natural form, dance leaves no tangible reference for systemic or discursive analysis, it is worth examining its means of knowing and processing knowledge. In a world where the verbal, the spoken word is God, and the written version is its anointed prophet, it will be a miracle to conceive dance as a true disciple of knowledge. However, when you ascribe meaning to something, it becomes tangible and its impact is limitless. This is what Africans have done successfully over the ages. However, while the African dances have often been approached from the anthropological perspective, the philosophical concept of the dances have been largely ignored. Deep ontological questions are seldom asked of them, let alone examined or acknowledged as epistemological agents. Paradoxically, the human body, which in Western epistemology invalidates dance as a legitimate way of knowing, is critical to its ability to embody knowledge. Philosophically, Africans in general have a holistic attitude to the body. The African body is a site of culture, sacredness, transgression, ineptness, and loftiness. By contrast, Western philosophy, underscored by Christian ethics, takes a dualistic approach to the body. The body is primarily a temple of God to be separated from the flesh, the weak body that easily transgresses. Viewed thus, it is difficult to conceive of the physical body as being one with the mind. So the mind, scholars have expounded the deep mind-body relationship in African-centered philosophy. This resonates strongly in dance epistemology. In semiotic parlance, the physical body is a sign of the person, a person with a mind capable of thinking. As such, that body that we can see and touch signifies the mind, a concept that we cannot see or touch. The mind resides within the body. And as the index or representation of the person and individual where the mind resides, the body becomes a symbol of cognition, that personality. The body is a visual symbol. The body signifies the mind and presents the visual symbol as a thinking being, able to communicate both verbally and non-verbally. Non-verbally, the body communicates through movements by sending out and receiving codes in 4 broad categories: presence, visual, proximal, and kinesics. And a brief definition of these 4 codes. Presence is made of 3 closely related body attitudes, namely appearance, posture, and sense. Appearance and posture are the first signals sent out by the body. They are mostly under voluntary control, easily altered, and so usually temporary, although some can be permanent. Stance, on the other hand, is perceived emotional or mental attitudes, and so more constant and more permanent. Visual communication sends out signals through gaze, eye contact, facial expressions, and it is commonly reflected in interpersonal, social, or emotional attitudes, as in speaker-listener, audience performer. Proxemics creates meaning through the use of space. Spaces can be used to bring people together, sociopetal, or discourage interaction, sociofugal. And the last one, kinesics, is the sum total of various and specific body movements. In daily communication, there is a close relationship between the verbalized and the non-verbal kinesics, such as saying no and shaking head, or saying there and pointing finger in that direction. African dance epistemics is knowledge through the body. Although the dancing body disappears with the dance, the dancer's body does not disappear from that community. It remains within the culture, encoding and decoding cultural knowledge accumulated over time, as well as new events that make the culture dynamic and relevant to the people. So embedded in these dances are the systems of knowing embodied in the dancer's movement and use of space. Yvonne Daniel argues in her book, Dancing Wisdom, that within the dancing body, quote, that within the dancing body, there is wisdom to be gained. The body requires knowledge by doing, moving itself, not by aimless wandering, but in structured and well-articulated ways that use social and cultural shaped skills. These, end of quote, these are what the choreographer uses in creating dance and telling stories. The body-mind relationship manifests as, now I'm using the Yoruba culture for my specific example. The body-mind relationship manifests as ìwọ̀ntúnwọ̀nsì, an important philosophical concept among Yoruba people, literally meaning measure the right, measure the left. Ìwọ̀ntúnwọ̀nsì in practice means to carefully assess all relevant possibilities before acting. It captures the essence of balance that the Yoruba seeks to attain in personal and public dealings. It also structures the social policy. The attainment of that status, the ìwọ̀ntúnwọ̀nsì, receives the accolade gun rege, that is perfect balance or straight cuts, and produces the ideal personality in Yoruba culture, who is saluted as Omoluwabi. This translates as the offspring of exemplary character. Character is a keyword here, for it is the prime element of the aesthetic, the worthy character that constructs beauty. The Yoruba say again, Iwalewa, character is beauty. Further underscoring the idea of gunrege or perfect cut, is what I may call the ontological idea of tibitire ni wọ́n jọ ń rìn. Both the good and the bad are travel companions. Life does not run smoothly, not always, and one should expect and prepare for disappointments. The ability to cope, to take the good with the bad and survive, is the measure of the ideal being. Measuring the right and the left is an injunction to avoid excesses, whether in the negative or positive qualities. Although, since the positive is more desirable and produces better outcomes, it should tip the scale. The Yoruba becomes uneasy when things are going too well or too badly for a prolonged time, and they seek spiritual or mystical help to arrive at the perfect situation. Thus, when something or somebody attains the quality of gunrege, straight cut, it means that the subject has successfully balanced the good with the bad. Badness and goodness are different, but they do not oppose each other. Rather, they complement each other to make a perfect status. That's complementary differences. Omoluabi, the ideal Yoruba personality, is the one who knows, the one who embodies knowledge, imo, and embeds ogbon, wisdom, to make the civilization survive and thrive. In the way of knowing, the concept of complementarity structures the mind, body, and subject-object relationship. Knowing through dance concerns the body's awareness and motility, and the Yoruba theory of complementarity provides the way of knowing through body movements. In my book, I define dance as the composite form of body attitude through which ordinary daily actions have been spatially rearranged and encoded to convey new sets of information. Within this definition are embedded significant fundamentals of dance epistemology. One, so let's break it down. Body attitude, that means body and mind, complementarity, or subject-object relationship. Coding, codes information, that is knowledge, and space equals environment or experience. So, put succinctly, the mind embedded in body thinks in movement drawn from experience. Or we can put it another way and say, the mind embedded in body codes knowledge drawn from cultural and environmental experiences. In dance, inner concepts, ideas, knowledge are externalized through the physical body to share with the spectators, and the knowledge passed on as wisdom. Further reinforcing dance epistemology is its ability to codify and encode experience through multiple communication channels simultaneously. You have the oral, visual, olfactory, tactile, spatial, and kinesics. By filling the senses with a multitude of related information crowded in the same time perspective, dance produces and powerfully imparts knowledge of, about, and to the people. African dance creates a powerful epistemological community with other art forms. Now, I'm venturing into an area that I'm trying to develop further here. Venturing into the umbrella of Africa-centered philosophy, I would say dance epitomizes, in a remarkable way, that concept of Ubuntu. I am because you are. Along with music, dance is arguably the most artistically engaged with all the other performing arts. It animates other art objects that are normally dormant, turning them into performing arts. Most African cultures, sculptures, and other multidimensional artworks are created not to be exhibited as stationary objects, but to be seen in action, in movement. And it is dance that gives them this completeness in their meaning and significance. Again, quoting Yvonne Daniel, she says, the dancing, quote, the dancing body is the vehicle of transcendence. Human voices in chants and songs and ancient rhythm sequences played primarily with human hands within a battery of drums and other percussion instruments, both initiate a codified dance vocabulary with the dancing body that is passed on through succeeding generations and across geographical space, end of quote. It is dance, an ephemeral art, that gives them this dynamic essence. A multisensory art form with multiple communication channels, visual, kinesics, auditory, and tactile, dance brings other art forms to life, including including the wisdom embedded in those art forms, like masks and so on. It energizes them to fulfill the purpose for which they have been created. And within this context, dance functions as a metaphysical bridge to other art forms, serving as a repository for and disseminator of their collective wisdom. Let me pause here and maybe we can then start discussing, and I will expand more or elaborate more on some areas that I had skipped, trying to keep the time.
Thank you, Professor Soyinka. That was such a thought-provoking talk. I'm going to open the floor for questions and comments. Please raise your virtual hand if you have a question or a comment. But before I open to everyone, I just want to ask, how has religion played a part in the misrepresentation and the disregarding of nonverbal communication in the Yoruba dance in Nigeria?
When you say religion, you mean the Yoruba religion? Or
no, like religion, like Christianity.
Well, thank you for asking. That allows me. In the Yoruba religion, the Orisha religion, dance is a very strong factor of worship. It features very prominently, and it ties the knowledge of the people together. Let me give the example of Shango dance. Shango is the deity of thunder and lightning. His dance is performed with the dancer holding what is called Oshe Shango, which is made, the tip is double-edged something, axe, like an axe. And the axe, of course, is metal. There was a lot of metal in Yoruba in the area. Now, when at the height of the dance, the dancer holds that axe, takes it to the sky, and use it to hit the ground that is calling on the lightning. And when I say Shango is a deity of thunder and lightning, this was in the history of Shango, this was his attempt to attract electricity from lightning, which in the ensuing story eventually destroyed him, sort of going to the aspect of excesses, to not be excessive in this, And then if you look at the story of his life, he's married to Oya. That is what we now call River Niger. If you look at the relationship between Shango, lightning and the River Niger, when there's lightning, River Niger is in turmoil. So there is that scientific connection that when Oya is celebrated, Shango is celebrated, and you have this ritual marriage, it tells this concept, this story of the concept of knowing, that there is that connection between lightning, the earth, and the river Niger. Oya. So that's, but within Christian religion, which had been introduced and, welcomed by many people in the Yoruba culture, the Christian religion separates the body from the soul or the spirit, and the body is seen as weak, as that must not be considered. It is removed from being because it violates the ethics of Christian morality. And it has to do with how the Christian religion progressed from soon after Christ's death, and how it spread to other parts of the world, even to Europe. It has to do with the Roman excesses, Roman Empire excesses, and so on and so forth. But then that body in worship must not dance. To dance is to violate the essence of the Christian religion. So you have these two contesting forces in many contemporary African cultures. Should you dance or should you not dance? And that is why you now have the evangelicals who say we have to dance, and they are Christians. So dance forms a vital part of, so there's a lot of things going on at the same time now. We are trying to sort ourselves out.
Thank you.
Did I answer your question?
Yes. Do you have any questions in the room? I see some questions in the chat. Amina, do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Okay, now I can speak. Thank you. Thank you so much, Prof. Soyinka. I don't know a lot about philosophy, but I would like to ask you a question about the mind-body dualism. I think at this moment, there's a lot of shift towards eradicating that Cartesian viewpoint. And I was wondering if this is something is it legitimate to do it within an African epistemology, to not think about the mind and the body as two separate entities and to think about them as one? Or would it be specific to each and every context and to each and every way of seeing the world? And I know you've spoken about complementarity, so when thinking about the complementarity of the mind and the body and the space, I was wondering if there is a specific way in which, through your research, you've come to see it as horizontal, or is it layered, or is it horizontal, or does it have a sort of is it a pyramid kind of? Sorry, I'm trying to visualize it in my mind, but I hope my question is clear. Yeah.
Yes, I think it's okay. Thank you for your question. That's what I haven't thought of, whether it is horizontal or lateral. But I think in Yoruba culture, and I believe in many other African cultures, the body and the mind form a single entity. Like I said, the body that transgresses is also the body that is sacred. It's the same body that commits something, a sin, let's say a sin, and it's the same body that goes into worship. What happens is that this body has transgressed. You perform rituals to ward off the effect of that transgression. And in performing rituals, you are becoming sacred. You are performing a sacred. So it's the same body. It's the same person. That's it. And that is why, and so when the Yoruba person, for example, seeks to know about something, it immerses itself in that object. So the subject and the object come together as one. You immerse yourself in that. By contrast, in Western epistemology, which is now being contested, and I try to, when I refer to Merleau-Ponty and the embodied cognition, he was one of the first that started this idea that, no, let's take a look, another look at the body, and let's get away from this underlining Christian theology that does not want to, or that says that the body must be separated from the mind, you know, and say, and you ignore the body completely. And, you know, like I think Judy Lynn Hanna said, the problem with Western epistemology, especially regarding that dance, is that the being has been removed from the essence of life. So they're separate. One is sacred up there and the other is buried down below. It's the same body. It's the same mind. The mind resides in the body. I use the concept of a tool. When you disregard a tool and you neglect it, then that tool cannot construct something good. When you neglect it, let's say a scalpel, a knife, you're a carver, and you have neglected your carving tools. They're rusted, they are blunt. What will be created won't be nice, won't be useful. So when you separate that physical entity, the body, from the mind, from the personality, it becomes difficult to work with that, or at least in the terms of dance, to recognize dance as a thinking element.
Thank you, Amina. Minga, I see a hand up. You can go ahead and ask your question or make a comment.
Yes, thank you so much, Prof. I really enjoy the talk. You've answered almost my question. So the question that Amina asked, it was the question that I wanted to ask as well. For me, I think I'm gonna go a bit because I was struck with the word that you said, the body and the mind relations. I think this is what you're explaining here. But I think Amina is looking at the philosophical way of how they describe the body. And many of us are aware that, René Descartes is, they call him the founder of the modern philosophy. Now, this is what he said. He said that, actually he established the basics of human existence, and he went and argued that he said, I think, therefore I am. Now, in your speech, you said, I am because you are. I can see already these two different philosophies here. But what I like is to maybe, you already spoke about it, because the reason why René Descartes drew on that, it's because this is what he said: the day I cease to live, I can no longer claim to be human. That's what he said. So most of the scientific discourses that we have, including religion, took from there, and reason why they separate some of these issues, like, the mind is something else, the body is also something else. But I'm quite glad the way you kind of like bringing all that together, just to explain in an African philosophy that concept is a Western concept, which in most cases, as you mentioned, that, in churches, in African dance, everything starts with singing. There's something that goes into the body in order for the body to reach, let me use the word ecstasy, for instance. There need to be some sort of sound. There need to be something that will link the body and the mind, which are all together. But I don't know if I'm making sense there, but you already explained it in a nice way that I found it more fascinated, especially when you said, I am because you are, but Descartes says, I think, therefore I am. So I would like for you maybe to talk a little bit more on these two different concepts. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Actually, I think you've really broadened your question, and embedded in there is the answer. I think because I am, because I am, I think, or I think, therefore I am. I'm sorry. I think, therefore I am. Okay. That concept focuses on the individual, what the individual has achieved is all due to that individual. That essence of collectivity is missing. And that is what in African philosophy sort of not react against, but what is different from the Western philosophy. The Ubuntu says, I am because you are. So I rely on you. I do not stand alone. Another way of saying it is that we stand on the shoulders of those who have gone before us. So this knowledge accumulates. It's cumulative. We learn from each other. I was going to say something and it just disappeared. For the individual in Western culture, and even it's still operative today when we talk of being a self-made person. When they say, oh, he's a self-made man, or I'm a self-made, I did, or pull yourself up in American parlance, pull yourself up by the bootstraps. It's attributing everything to that individual. Well, how did you get there? Who made the boots? Who made the straps? How did you know that you have to pull yourself up? I'm a self-made person. I built this company myself. How about the transportation? How about the roads created? Did I build the roads that I use in making my whatever company or whatever it is? I employ these people. Did I give them the education? They made the education to be able to make themselves employable. So I am using, so even though, you know, I'm using, if I'm using them in the African concept, I'm drawing from the work, from the what the others have done. And that's what I'm using to build myself. So I didn't do it all by myself. Let me see, what else can I say? Oh, now, when Descartes said, the day I stop living, oh, sorry, how did you put it?
He said, the day I cease to live, I can no longer claim.
The day I cease to live, I can no
longer claim my humanness.
Okay. Now, what is entailed in that living? For the African, is the living means movement. The African will say, if I can no longer move, then I cease to be. No longer move embodies both the mind and the physical body. Without the ability to move, we become worried. What is going on here? Because movement also means life. And so in that movement, you have that combination of the mind and the body. Because even though I had used the metaphor of the body as a tool, unlike regular tools that somebody has to use, the body as a tool moves itself. So it incorporates the mind. Is the mind moving the body, and it is the mind and the body together that keeps alive, that makes you think, that makes you build knowledge. But then you're not building that knowledge by yourself, you're sharing it with others. In a sense, this has been used against this spirit of collectivity, has been used against Africans' way of knowing, because instead of saying, oh, it is John Pike that discovered this, it's given to the society, or at best, or otherwise, it's attributed to the mystical powers. That's the aspect, the spiritual being. That's the aspect that I did not go into, but it's also features in even dance epistemology. I'm focusing more on the dance than pure African philosophy. And that's why I said African-centered philosophy. How does dance fit into that idea of African-centered philosophy?
Thank you, Prophet Binga. We have a question from Vanessa. I'm going to go ahead and read it. So the question is to think about dance as expression limiting, considering this as a suggesting Considering this as suggesting that expression is secondary to something else that drives it, is it more coherent with the African notion of Ubuntu to perceive dance as an base or foundation essence itself and not secondary? Perhaps this builds on Minga's and Amina's point.
Please, can you repeat the question? I got lost somewhere there.
Okay. So is to think about dance as expression limiting, considering this as suggesting that expression is secondary to something else that drives it? Is it more coherent if the African notion of Ubuntu to perceive dance as an base or foundational essence itself and not secondary?
I don't think that dance is expression limiting. And I don't think I said that. So if you heard that, I think it's you misheard me. It is very expressive. And in its expression, it combines it brings many things together. So when a dancer comes on stage, what appearance does that dancer create? So you see, the dancer is, wearing special costumes. What are those costumes for? Are they specific to a particular deity? Are they specific to a particular culture? Can you discern what culture that costume comes from? So that appearance says something. Is the dancer wearing a mask in addition to the costume? So you are really, there's a barrage of information that is given out there. So you look at the mask, what does that mask represent? What does it mean? Is it a mask of war? There is, again, let me draw from Yoruba culture. There is a mask called Ekpa mask. It's heavy. And yet dancers carry it, moving nimbly, apart from other things. Why? Why do they have to? Is it punishment? Why do they have to carry such heavy masks? But what you find that it's, among other things, the mask is strength training, especially among young people who in times of war are called on to go to arms. They have to be agile. They have to be able to move in difficult terrain. They have to be able to move nimbly in difficult terrain. So that's one of the purposes of that mask. So you see that mask. And sometimes if the mask appears suddenly, there's nothing happening, no festival happening, no special dance event happening, and the mask is brought out, then people wonder, are we declaring a war against somebody? Who is this somebody? Or who are these people? What have they done? So there's a lot of stories woven around the appearance of that mask and the context in which the mask appears. So there is a lot of expressiveness. So dance is very expressive. And that's why I said the visual aspect, the gaze, the look, the contact, facial contact, the smile, if the mask is, if it's a visual appearance. So I don't know if that covers a part of the question. If you can, the person who asked the question can expand a little bit more, or narrow it down, not expand, and maybe I can give a more satisfactory answer.
I just want to ask something about, so with the passage of time and the postmodern influence, how have some ritual performances changed, and how has this modification of these performances like removed the sacredness of the Yoruba performances? I hope that makes sense.
Okay, one example, not related, came to mind immediately. Once I was, a long time ago, I was in Senegal, and there was this woman selling peanuts or groundnuts by the roadside, wizened elderly woman. Her appearance suggested that she was, just getting by. And then, so I stopped to buy some peanuts. And as we were talking, exchanging conversation, something sounded in her baskets of, what was it? A phone, a cell phone. I was really taken aback, because at this time, this was in the early 2000s, mobile phones were not common. And with the appearance of this woman, what I had deducted from her appearance, I was not expecting it. So she picked it up, answered, calmly. And then we continue with the bargain of the purchase of the peanut. So in this sense, the dances, the sacred dances, have also adjusted. And I'm thinking, to continue with the example of the Shango, the deity of thunder and lightning, and justice is also the deity of justice in Yoruba culture. Sorry, I neglected to mention that. The dance wand, the Oshe Shango, the axe, like double-edged axe, is still there. It is still part of the culture because it's very important. It signifies that call, the lightning striking the earth from the sky, and the dance, the movement that tries to create that thunder, lightning, zigzag. The dance of Shango is sort of alternate body movement, zigzag. So those are critical. But in the costume, let's say the costume used to be dyed, used to use traditional dyes from leaves and so on. But why bother with that? The red color, red is the color of Shango. Why go to, go to the bush to get the leaves to make the dyes and so on, when red color is now synthetically produced, when there are red materials sold at the market, so they buy the red material. And on this, the costume, on the red material, you have oweyo, the cowrie shells that used to be harvested from the sea, sewn onto the costume. But now there are synthetic cowrie shells mass produced. Why not use those? So they use those things. And, so you have these postmodern elements grafted onto something ancient. It shows that the culture is dynamic. The purists might argue about this, but the religion continues, the practice continues. And people say, you know, in terms of when you want to get the truth out of people, ask them to swear by the Bible. They will swear by the Bible, knowing that they are lying like a trooper. But then ask them to swear by Shango, and they feel reluctant. They change the story because the essence of that religion, that it's something, you know, what Shango represents is something that comes from within the culture. Whereas the Bible is what is imposed on the people. So the belief, the approach, the meaning each creates, you know, has some different emphasis placed on them. Now, another example, which is more recent, there is we have these masked dancers who have their traditional music, you know, the drums, and the dance, and they have the traditional movements. But I saw one circulating recently on social media, and the man was dancing furiously, seriously, and beautifully, I must say, to contemporary synthetic music, I think by a Nigerian musician, and it generated quite some debate. Oh, look at this, what they have reduced our traditional dances to. And I thought the man was moving rhythmically, he was dancing beautifully, and he captured what is now current. It's a postmodern dance, and he's still using the indigenous expression. That continuity is still there, but it's still dynamic. But it's dynamic. It is what is relevant to the performer and to the audience. Now, people in my age group are probably the ones complaining, see what they have reduced our culture into, our tradition. But how much of that tradition, when in its purest form, how much does it mean to the younger generation? There is Bata music, indigenous, traditional, ancient, and powerful form of music. But how many of our children perform this music now? But they can borrow from the rhythmic foundation of that Bata music to graft onto contemporary music.
Thank you, Prof. We're gonna take our last comment or question from Minga.
Mine is not a question, it's just the affirmation of what Prof has spoken there in terms of masks and the meaning of mask and how these masks are worn. I don't know if you can see behind me the masks on a bookshelf.
Yeah.
So, yeah, these are two masks that, the big one at the bottom here are masks that men wear, but the one on top is for female. So they're quite heavy masks, and you can see actually how a person embodied, because there's a mask and there's also an attire, quite heavy. And they could dance with that mask for hours without being tired. You know, so this mask, I got it when I went home. That was in December last year. And I got it because of my father, because, you know, I never been in a village for quite some times, but last year we went to the village. I come from the Central Africa with a tribe called Kuba. So these are the masks that they wear, you know, and actually this is not well designed. It doesn't have everything. It has the feathers and other stuff on top of it, you know, where, and it's called ipwem, you know. The way they embody, the dancers embody the masks, because you cannot take the mask until such notice. You dance with the mask, whether you sweat or not. But you look at the body that wear the mask, it's so a small body wearing such a big mask, heavy masks, and they wear and they dance with the mask for long and long and long. So it's just to affirm some of the you know, what you have spoken here about, because you touch on a mask, you know, I feel like, you know, I need to speak a bit more about the mask and the body and the relationship with even the sound, you know, when you say you lift your hand up, you know, all these issues, but we can leave it for a different, different discussions. But there are so many relationships when I look at the way you explain about these masks and how we embody, you know, the body and the mind in terms of relationships. There are similarities with where I come from. So that's just a comment that I would like to add. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minga. Okay, I think we're over time. So I just want to thank Professor Ajayi-Soyinka for the great talk. Thank you so much for making the time, really appreciate it. Please visit our website to join us for our other event. Tomorrow we're gonna be joined by Shania on the Ajayi series. Her talk is going to be centered on feminist digital praxis. Thank you so much for joining us. And I'm going to end the talk right here.
Thank you very much for having me, and I thank the members of the audience for their questions. Set me thinking further in the area. So thank you very much. I appreciate this, and it's an honor to be with you today.
Thank you.
Bye.